What you heard in the first 5 episodes wasn't the whole story. Not because some of it didn't matter, but because I was still finding my footing, learning the mic, and deciding how brave I was ready to be out loud. If you've ever walked away from a conversation thinking, I should have said that differently, or maybe I should have said more, this episode is for you. Today, we're going behind the mic. I'm pulling back the curtain on episodes 1 through 5, the moments that hit harder than I expected, the parts I softened, and the truths I saved for later. Because growth doesn't always show up polished. Sometimes it shows up messy, mid sentence, and a little uncomfortable. So this isn't a rewind, it's a reveal. This is you sticking with that? Today, we're saying the parts that didn't get said the first time.
Hey, Steffi K got something to say. Talk that listens, clears the way. Truth on the mic, grounded in change. You sticking with that? Oh yeah, we sticking with that. Laugh it out, talk it through, we ain't looking back.
Some chats ain't easy, but we take it slow. Tough stuff, tackle now, watch us glow.
Sticking with it. Yeah, we sticking with that.
In episode 1, we talked about what's going on. How do we reconnect with people again? How do we share the love a little more so that we have to give? And what are some exact things we can do? As a follow-up to that, I was talking to my cousin Kathy today, and she recently lost her father a couple weeks ago, right before Christmas. And she was just saying how nice it is to know that people care. Just a phone call. Texts are good, but I think, again, in big situations like that, big events where there's a life change, phone calls just hit harder. I think because you can, hear the inflections in the other person's voice, and maybe just add some things that you didn't know at the time. I know for me, sometimes hard situations are difficult to reach out because I don't know what to say. But I think it's important to know that you don't have to say anything, really. I mean, you can call and just say, I'm just checking on you, and go from there. And that little gesture really, really means the world. Episode 2. We talked about parenting through a different Christmas. For me, as I had mentioned in the episode, I had a completely different Christmas this year. It was the first one that I was having Christmas with my kids separate from my ex-husband's family. And everything actually went better than I could have expected, even though everything was completely different. We kind of took over my mom's house and had the meals over there. The kids were gracious and certainly good with coming back and forth between houses. And it ended up, we played a lot of board games, had some good talks, and it ended up being, like I said, better than I expected. The other side did help a lot because I also, when you take my mom's situation, she's just a single gal living by herself and doesn't cook a lot. And I needed dishes to cook for a huge amount of people. And so I did borrow some pans and some utensils and some things from some friends to pull off the meals. But also my ex-husband was gracious enough to bring stuff over too, like a party table, some chairs, bowls, and things like that. So that was also gracious and kind and necessary to pull off Christmas in some kind of new way. So hopefully those of you that also went through something similar found that it went better than you expected. Um, I'm just very good also at looking at the positives and the good parts wherever I can find them. I also had several friends who reached out for coffee dates in between over the week, the holiday week, and that was amazing to catch up with them, regroup. Sometimes we just have to talk things out, and it's nice having a friend that we can sit with for a time, whether by phone or in person, where we can talk it out. Sometimes just hearing ourselves say something out loud changes everything. And we can be like, okay, like I was talking to Kathy today, and I said I've been on a little bit of a self-sabotage kick and distraction kick, and I don't know why I'm doing it. And just hearing me say that out loud, I was a little bit like, okay, that's why. That's why. I don't actually know how to put that into words to you guys right now, but I'm closer anyway to getting it done. But I always try to think too, like, what can I learn in this situation? What can I gain, and try to turn any situation that I feel might bring me down in some kind of way and flip it. And a lot of that's just the mindset, and then just doing that consistently over time. Episode 3 was Are You Sticking With That Christmas, where I interviewed my mom. And that was very interesting. Shortly after the episode aired, I was in a car with my kids, 2 of them, Sydney and Carter, and we were going to look at Christmas lights out of town. And we were listening to the episode, and it concluded, and Sydney said to me, well, Mom, it just seems like you're asking everybody else to do those things, but you're not doing those things. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, there's certain things I was wanting them to be at the house to do our certain tradition at this time or whatever. And I always cook certain foods that they've had their entire lives. And basically the conclusion was, or what I said to her was, I feel, especially in lieu of the change in the marriage, I was doing everything I could to hang on tooth and nail to the traditions that I had grown up with, that had been in my family for maybe 100 years. But they weren't necessarily wanting that. And they weren't necessarily wanting to keep some of those traditions. And so it was like I was constantly feeling like I was fighting them and fighting everybody. But I had to, once I said that out loud and we talked about it, I realized it was me that was clinging to some of those things. On the flip side of that, if we don't have traditions, what do we have? I feel that they're important in a lot of ways when they're healthy and beneficial to us, and they bring some kind of family heritage to the table in a lot of ways. So after the talk, we kind of were able to be back on the same page. She wasn't realizing how strongly I was feeling on those things and why I was working so hard to keep it all together. And that was really a pivotal moment. And again, it comes down to communication. And I didn't know how to express what I was feeling, and neither did the kids. And it just seemed to be a turning point, and made the rest of the holiday even that much more special. Growing up as kids, we didn't miss Christmas. And even as we were, maybe in our 20s and we kind of moved a little bit away, it was like we couldn't wait to get there. To be with our family and, grandma, cousins on the farm, and just do all the stuff. And it's hard when you move away. And I think a lot of us have moved away from our family in distance, and it's really hard to bring that feeling back. For those of us that have something like that from our childhood, we just really cherish those memories, and we'd like to have something like that for our children. And it's hard to do that when there's distance, separating everybody. So I just think we do the best we can. Maybe share our stories more. I think one thing I wish I had done with my kids is share all these stories that mean so much to me, share them more, and maybe repeat them so that they know how important they are and how special they are. I think that is also a key thing we can do. Another thing was, as I was interviewing my mom, we were talking about one of my childhood Christmases, and she started crying, and I didn't expect that. Certainly as an adult now, I know how hard she worked and everything she did to, do her best to keep food on the table and make sure we had everything we need, which she did. But I didn't realize that me sharing a story was going to have that much of an impact. So that was definitely a moment that you guys couldn't see on the audio. That I guess my point is we all remember things differently, and that is okay. But I think also having compassion and empathy for each other is super important in whatever that means with those memories. And, one thing too, with me doing this podcast, I really absolutely love it. And I feel divinely called to do it. But it's been interesting because I think sometimes when you try a new adventure, there's setbacks. And sometimes I feel like that's a test to see how bad you want it. Episode 1, I had downloaded a podcast program called Riverside with a video, and had done my little 1-minute trailer that way, or worked on it at that same time. Anyway, then I had 3 days I was using to prepare to do that first episode, and it wouldn't work. I tried for 4 hours to get it in, and it wouldn't work. Episode 2, I know there were some interesting things there, but I do want to mention episode 3 was when I interviewed my mom, and I had purchased a second microphone to interview her, and we were even going to do a video. And I tried for a couple hours again using my equipment. I have some podcasting equipment set up to do, and it just absolutely wouldn't work. And turns out I purchased the wrong microphone. There's apparently a USB microphone and an XLR microphone, and the PodTrack thing didn't read the one I had purchased. So basically, my mom and I were bending over and sharing the same microphone for that interview, which was not my intent. But again, I just keep trucking along. So, and then episode 4 was the one where I interviewed Ryan, and we talked about our weight loss journeys, which was just incredible to hear his story and how powerful it was, and to share all of that with you. But I had a couple hours during the day where I was doing nothing but my script and getting everything set up. And I needed to update the firmware on my travel microphone, which I have up here. This is just kind of pretend today. But anyway, so I had the 2 hours of just straight up nothing but podcast prep. So excited. And I needed to do a firmware update, which normally, in my opinion, would take about 2 minutes. And it took 3 hours. In fact, I left to meet him at a gym class, and had to leave my phone at my place. So I went with no phone. And then he didn't make it to the class. So I had no way of knowing if that interview was even going to happen. And so by the time we came together to pull that off, I had zero preparation time into that because the firmware was loading the entire time. So we did all of that completely on the fly, which was even more amazing once you know that. As far as my weight loss journey, as you know that I mentioned on that episode, my goal is 100 pounds. And I got to 97. And I believe the reason that is because I'm taking this last bit of the journey with you. I did take the month of December off with the holidays in the first part of January here. And I did weigh in today and I'm at 163. So now I still have 7 pounds to go. Have gained a little bit back and I will do it. I will be focused here and I am very excited to purchase the big balloons and have a little celebration with you all when we hit that goal, which will be just around the corner. I have no doubt about that. One thing also is I do have a smoothie recipe that I will be sharing. I kind of replaced my lunches in most cases with a smoothie, and it's got a lot of really good stuff in it, like cayenne pepper and turmeric and black pepper, ginger, some extra stuff that people maybe don't think to stick in their smoothies. And so I'll be excited to share that with you too here down the road. 2 whole cloves a day. 2 whole cloves a day. I did read some reports on the advantages of that. And by that, I mean you could either stick them in your mouth like gum, I guess, and just suck on them. I did hear one person say that they just kind of keep them in their mouth for 20 minutes and then swallow them. I tend to do that a little bit, but I don't know if I keep them in the 20 minutes. I just chew on them and swallow them. But I highly recommend that. Some of the advantages of that are they boost immunity, improve digestion, they protect the liver, and they reduce inflammation. And I know me, if I don't have any really extra healthy eating habits that day, I just always make sure I at least get my 2 cloves in. And you can get them most anywhere. They do have them in jars too, which you could put the jar in a central location where you're gonna look at it every day, or I need to do that because if it's out of sight, it will be out of mind. And so I highly recommend putting them in a spot that you will remember to do it every day. Episode 5 was Before You Say I Do, and interesting on setup on that too, by the way, is I just felt like I was going to do it at a remote location and do it from the beach. And there are a number of beaches in this area, and I was called to a beach called Honeymoon Island. And so I went out there, and even now, by the way, as a side note, the leaf blower is blowing right now. It never blows. It hasn't blown in weeks, and it's blowing right now. So that's cool. I never really connected the fact that for the episode called Before You Say I Do, I was drawn to go to a beach called Honeymoon Island. That's kind of hilarious. So anyway, I went out there for the whole day. I brought all my my whiteboards, my markers, note cards, all the things I thought I would need to do a remote episode. And I sat in the car for like 4 hours. In hindsight, I should have sat on the beach, but I was in the car because for some reason, a beach that's never usually busy was super packed on a Wednesday. And so there was a lot of noise, a lot of distractions. So I prepared my script. I got it all ready to go. I had a bunch of it on note cards. And as I was recording it, I was kind of dropping the note cards to the ground. So if you picture 40 note cards all over the grass, Barney Fife, the beach patrol guy, comes over and he's like, what are you doing? And are you going to pick those up? And I said, yes, I am going to pick those up. Of course I am. I'm not going to leave them here. And then he drove off and then he circled back and told me I had to pick up the note cards right now. Like he didn't trust that I was going to pick them up. So I had, 3 note cards left. So anyway, I got those picked up. Barney Fife left. And then I went into town to the internet at a coffee shop so I could download the episode. And just didn't seem like it was the right vibe or what I wanted to say. And so I ended up scrapping the whole thing, starting over, re-recording an entirely new episode in the car. And that is the one that you heard. So I just feel like I will get back to episode 5 here specifically, but when, they say in general that people don't act unless they're either scared or pissed off. And if you think about that internally, that I think there's some truth to that. But in my case, it just seems like, when you have setback after setback, it becomes more of a comedy show, I guess, like funny to me, and sometimes predictable. And of course, just makes me work harder and wanted it even more. So, I think reminding ourselves of our perseverance and our, I don't know, gumshoe that's not the word I want, but you know what I mean? Like what makes us tick and what makes us keep at it. And it kind of sparks that fire inside us that keeps us going and makes us even more determined to follow through on what it is we're trying to accomplish. I'm reminded of that today, and I've been reminded of that every single week I have pulled this podcast off. So I guess there's something to be said in there too. My faith is unshakable. And in fact, with this whole process of life and the large amount of things that I will share with you guys along the way that has been thrown at me in the last 5 years, it's just strengthened that on every level, really. There's that saying, you have survived everything you thought you wouldn't, every single thing. So every time I think we as people think, well, we can't go any further, or this isn't going to work, or whatever, every single time it does, every single time. Now, things might not turn out exactly how we think they will, but they do turn out. And typically it's always for the better when we have time to sit back and reflect on that. So getting back to episode 5, and we talked about marriage. My daughter Sydney's engaged and going to be married at some point in the future. And so I wanted to reflect on that. And I think too, in addition to the episode, we need to figure out like how we reconnect with our spouse when there's been a disconnect, when we've kind of grown apart over the years. How do we reconnect that? And, I drew a little pictogram here for those of you that will be watching this on video, but it's like we start out, we're dating and we're holding hands and we're smiling and all the stuff. Then in some cases we're like, okay, I want to spend eternity with you, and I want to go to a church or to a remote location and get married, and let's do it. Great. So then we're still smiling and all the stuff. So then somehow after that, then typically like one person quits smiling. So I don't know if it's somebody's not following through, somebody's not helping, usually somebody's not doing something that we thought. So how do we even in this process say, like, this is what I need, this is what I want? What do you need? What do you want? And how do we communicate that? Because then as we keep going, then you kind of like we have two sad faces. And I'm drawing stick people here. This is about the extent of my artistic abilities here. But, then we have two sad faces. So how do we get from this, back to, I'm drawing a heart with two stick people in them, back to this. If we don't communicate, that's certainly not going to get us there. We got to figure out how are we going to. I heard one saying that resonated with me, and it goes like this: the best gift you ever gave me was a new perspective, because before you, my biggest fear was being alone. After you, my biggest fear is settling. So how do we get from this to some of us thinking that resonates with them? That is the question. I also think we need an example, maybe a biblical example, some kind of example where, it works. I don't know what I need to draw here, but where they're connected, and what they have here you know, there are some religions where like you don't even know the people are fighting. Like, you know what I mean? Like I have some friends that I met, and they're like, yeah, if our parents were fighting, even we didn't even know. The kids didn't even know in the home. Because I think once you bring that out and you're sharing your woes to the best friend and the family and all the stuff, that can get blown up into a whole thing. And then they're giving their input and their advice. But we need to listen to each other. You know, it's important to listen to each other to make things back to the way they should be. But it's how do you not go through all this stuff? How do you not go through this stuff? And you're always like this. Because life is supposed to be enjoyed. Life is supposed to be full of love and happiness. And so many of us are living in total crap. And it's like, how do we find our way out of it? So I think together we can start to find ways, communication as we know, but we don't even know what to say. It's like, okay, so, in the case of a relationship, you hurt me so badly in whatever way it was. How do you really come back from that? And sometimes you can't. I mean, if it's a situation where there was, severe abuse or something like that, then you shouldn't, in my opinion, at all. But if it's more of a habits, they change habits or whatever, I think a lot of it too is we grow. We're supposed to grow. That is one thing we're supposed to do. And we are forgetting that we need to learn to love each other over and over again over the course of a long time relationship. That person's not going to be the same person they were 20 years ago or 30 years ago or even 5 years ago. And we need to grow with them and learn to love that new version of them. And I think no one ever taught us that. And so that piece is getting missed. Also, I think a lot of us are doing jobs we can't stand. And then we kind of bring that bad mojo into the home and into that relationship. So it's like, if we could think back to when we were kids and what did we love to do? When we were a kid, maybe under the age of 10 even, like what did we love to do? Is there something creatively that just really made us so happy? And is there a way you can turn that thing into a career? Can you start your own business doing that thing? Or how could you revamp it but still make it so it's a part of your life? Maybe you need to do a regular job you don't necessarily love, but on the weekends and in the evenings, you could do that other thing that really brought your heart joy and happiness. And I think these are some of the things that we need to look at, and that will help us on our journeys and help us be better people, not only to ourselves, but to others. And I think that's where it starts, one relationship at a time. Yeah. So for my tips of the day, I'm not certain if I've expressed these in the past, but I certainly think these are game changers. At least they were for me. And one is do one new thing every day. And I think I did talk about that in episode 1, but we'll circle back on it. Whether it's brush your teeth with the other hand, or, go to a different restaurant, or call somebody that you haven't talked to in a while, or, it could be anything, but just one new thing. So when you go to sleep, what is one new thing that you did that day, even if it's a small thing? And it certainly doesn't have to, or even shouldn't cost any money. And the other thing is, before you grab your phone in the morning, what are 5 things that you're grateful for that you don't have to pay for before your feet hit the floor in the morning? Do that every day. If this episode stayed with you, that's the point. Growth usually shows up after the conversation ends. And there's more coming. Dating from both perspectives, what men mean and what women hear, the couth, things we say and do that don't help at all, and those moments when you realize, well, good thing I didn't overreact. Meet me back here next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We are on all major platforms. And remember, understanding isn't accidental, it's intentional. And it starts with what you do next. See you soon.